Yes. This has been so wonderful. It's been so nice to get to know you guys better, and I really enjoyed this. Are we recording? Okay. I'm just gonna test one thing. But there's no microphone here. Welcome. Can you hear me? Testing? No? Oh, just Eric. Eric, can I bring you closer to me? And can I pin this from you? Yes. We'll do this. Yes. I'll make it work. So welcome. Thank you so much for coming. It's a pleasure to be with you all and to celebrate the spirit of Rockwell, Kent, and this amazing collection that we have here at SUNY Plattsburgh. It is also my pleasure to recognize our next speaker, which is Eric Torm, former schoolmaster and superintendent of schools, and he is now working as a project advisor at the Umanak Polar Institute and Children's Home with Cultural and Historical Studies. He is also the author of When the Color Ceases to Be Just a Color, Rockwell Kent's Greenland Paintings. Thank you, Eric, for being here, and without further ado, I will turn it over to Eric.
And thank you for inviting me. This polar bear claw, this claw I have got from an Inuit friend. He told me, don't let the tip point to the right. It should point to the left, to your heart. If it points to the right, it will be weak. If it points to the left, it will be strong as a polar bear. And just now, I need that force. Because it's the first time I'm making a lecture in English. So I hope you will understand my Danish accent. I will do my best anyway, and I will follow my manuscript close because that's needed for me. First of all, it is important for me to underline that I'm here on behalf of the Children's Home in Umanak and Umanak Polar Institute. In Denmark, as told, I've been teacher and head teacher for 30 years. In 1998, the Agency for Schools and Education in Reykjavik, in Nuuk, took contact to me. They asked me to participate as an advisor for a new school program. In 2006, the head of Umanak Children's Home asked me to be a voluntary staff member there. Umanak Polar Institute was set up as an umbrella for our cultural, artistic, and scientific projects. These projects are important in our nurture and upbringing of the kids. In my work, with collecting cultural, historical materials and artifacts from the Umanak area, I came across the name Rockwell, Kent. Up there, some people still remembering they have been told from the family, from their parents about it. During my research, I have visited archives, museums, and galleries in US, Russia, not least in Greenland and Denmark, and the museum in Sicily. Oh, technique. We found those two watercolor paintings. The one Jette has already shown you, but there are two. Huanasuak means thank you so much, and Inusluana means all the best. In the archives in Copenhagen, I found a number of unknown handwritten letters from Kent to the polar explorer Peter Freuchen and to the director for the Greenland agency in Copenhagen, Daugaard-Jensen. Also, I found unknown letters between Daugaard, Knud Rasmussen's wife, and Peter Freuchen. Combined with the letters in the archives in Copenhagen, they shed a new light on the relationship between Rasmussen and Kent. But remarkably, I found no letter from Kent to Rasmussen. The last letters between them are written in March 31. At that time, they had known each other for less than 2 years and only corresponded for 15 months. Based on passenger lists, all indications are that Kent and Rasmussen first met each other on the boat Disco at Regadasmark in the second half of August 29. During the last part of the stay, Kent sailed north on board Disco to Regadasmark to see a little bit more of Greenland. This trip is mentioned in N by E. Rasmussen and Freuchen were at that time on their way back from a trip to Thule and were leaving Regadasmark on board Disco, returning to Nuuk. Shortly after, Rasmussen and Kent were together passengers on board Disco on the way to Copenhagen. Freuchen was not on board, but he went to Krakatoa, and in the end of October, he arrived to Copenhagen with the steamer Transport. How they missed that Freuchen was together with Rasmussen and Kent on board Disco on the way to Copenhagen is all in the air. It is a very widespread miss. And you can see the passenger list. No Freuchen there. When Kent and Rasmussen arrived to Copenhagen in the middle of September, they were received by their wives. Francis and Kent were then invited to stay with the Rasmussen family in Hundersted. Over the next few months, they got very close to each other. Daugaard became deeply fascinated by Kent. A letter from Daugaard to Kent. Speaks its clear language. But before then, I will just show this. This is newspaper photos of Danish newspapers on their arrival to Copenhagen in 29. But Daugaard wrote, Rockwell, I dare not go to America and live with you. I fear my life will be spoiled because Knud Rasmussen and my living together will not be what it has been if I should continue with that dreadful longing for you. Before leaving Denmark, December 1st, Dagmar, after parting, unburdened herself to Francis about the letter she has written to her husband. You see them there together with Daugaard-Jensen. But Francis apparently took the situation calmly and did not change the invitation to Dagmar to visit the US. But the fascination also disappeared quite quickly. Already in mid-March, Dagmar wrote to Francis. But anyhow, whether I can come or not, you should know, Francis, that it is over now, what I told you that day on the boat. If I come, it will be in a free and happy way, and I feel it myself as an immense relief that it is so now. I admire you for inviting me in spite of that, but you need not to think of that anymore. It is over, saying Scott. How Rasmussen had experienced Dagmar's fascination of Kent, we do not know exactly. But it is a fact that his letters to Kent did not immediately signal jealousy or unfriendliness. On the contrary. In a letter in June, he sent a cordial greeting. Thanks for all what Francis that you were doing for that man. And it is the daughter of Knud and Dagmar. Your friend Knud. At that time, Dagmar and their daughter Hannah stayed at Kent's farm as well. However, it is in the same letter from June 30 in which Rasmussen wrote that Kent's criticism of his secretary, Miss Emmy Lovberg, was unfair. The criticism was about some photos that Emmy had not sent to Kent as promised. It may seem as a little thing, but since Emmy plays an indirect role for the friendship between Rasmussen and Kent from start to finish, this episode might still have some significance. Already in the letter from April 30th, from Dagmar to Francis, she wrote that she had noticed that Francis and Kent did not like Emmy. I will later return to it. In Rasmussen's house in Hundested, there was a great hospitality. Rasmussen's hospitality was confirmed in a letter from him to Kent, January 3rd. And here will always be something, room or a bed, waiting, empty, looking for your books. In a letter a year later, in 31, he confirmed this invitation to accommodate in their house. We take it for granted that Francis will accompany you to Copenhagen and take leave with you here. What a perfect it would be if Francis could stay by Dagmar and get good and quiet time as soon as we have left. Dagmar looks already so much forward to it. When Francis and Kent arrived to Copenhagen in May 31, they were kindly received by Dagmar and Rasmussen, but to their great disappointment, accommodated by a family they did not know in advance. In his memoirs, It's me, O Lord, he wrote. If we had served a leaving home, it was mitigated by the thought that in Denmark and in Copenhagen we should be among friends. It was therefore a great disappointment to find that despite Knud's most hearty reception, he had arranged to farm us out to a family in Copenhagen. Something must have changed during the spring of 31. Therefore, I will now try to point out some of the events that may explain Rasmussen's choice not to accommodate Knuds privately. In December 30, Knud's book N by E was published. The book contains a chapter with a translation of Rasmussen's Greenlandic legend about the sea hunter from a look who never left his birthplace. In addition, the book had an appendix, the translated Inuit poems, written down by Rasmussen. Freuchen wrote to Ken in January for the book, about the book, to say is impossible. How in hell could I know that you are a poet long beyond any I met before? And now, your drawing keep folks away. I'm crazy about your book in by E. That mixture, humor, honest words, love of nature and philosophy I never met in my life, and I am surprised. Big words from Peter Freuchen. Rasmussen also received the book, but his reaction was not quite as overwhelming as Freuchen's. I congratulate you with your fine result of your Greenland trip, the book. I can imagine that it will have success. You will have success on this too. I have not been able to find any letters between Knud and Rasmussen or between his publisher and Rasmussen regarding agreements about translations and rights. At first glance, it does not emerge that Rasmussen in advance had known about the content of N by E and Knud's translation of some of his texts. Both N by E and Melvin's Mobility, the text illustration, some of the native Buddhism, became a major safe success in the US. Rasmussen's books, on the other side, were only sold to a limited extent in Denmark. In a letter from Rasmussen from January 31, Knud's upcoming Greenland trip was also an issue. I would be glad to hear a little about your Greenland expedition. This autumn, I bought a very fine motorboat in Norway, especially good for sailing in Greenland. I had intended to make a voyage to Greenland in this boat, but because of my illness and I unfortunately almost 10 weeks late in my work. So I'm not any longer quite sure that I can be ready for traveling this summer. But still, I hope it very much. Apparently, Knud reads this letter as an invitation to sail together with Rasmussen, not only in Greenland, but also to Greenland. It appears from Knud's answer to Rasmussen. I'm very excited for the prospect of going to Greenland in your boat. From my point of view, it will be a great privilege, and you may count upon me to do my part in making is an agreeable adventure for you. Do by all means try to arrange your summer so we can do it. Rasmussen's response in March must have been a disappointment. Okay. As we soon will meet, I shall not write much about the motorboat trip. Of course, I would be glad if we some way could combine our journeys the coming summer. About your Iceland trip, it cannot be connected with the motorboat, as the boat will be taken up direct by freight on one of the steamers. This answer was have been like a douche of cold water in the face of Knud, who apparently to that extent had aimed after a boat trip to Iceland and Greenland together with Rasmussen. Later in March, Rasmussen followed up this letter. He wrote that a lack of money may cause that a trip to Greenland could not be carried through at all, but that they could talk it over when Knud had arrived to Copenhagen. How much they managed to talk in Copenhagen, we do not know. As mentioned, they were not accommodated in Hundested, and therefore they did not get a close daily contact, and consequently the atmosphere between them has hardly been the best. The fact is that Knud and Rasmussen traveled separately to Greenland without any agreement to meet up there. Yet the archives of both US and Denmark have a comprehensive collection of letters between Freuchen and Knud and Francis. Freuchen, in particular, was an incredibly diligent writer. In the letters, they seem to trust each other very openly, and they had common views on socialism. It became a long-lasting friendship between them. And now you can read together with me. Because now it's about oh, where do I move this? Oh yes, back. So this is a handwritten. It's from the handwritten letter I found. Never wrote before. After an hour-long conversation with Daugaard, I write to you a postscript. Daugaard spoke at length about Knud, showing a tolerant and even affectionate understanding of his weakness, and altogether so fair and generous and as estimate of him that I'm wrought to say, good, if you can be like that, so can I. He was, if not fully aware of Knud's letters, not opposed by them, and that manner of approach on which Knud counted to win an occasional favor was to Daugaard only quite obviously childish and unnecessary. Shortly after, Freuchen responded to Knud's letter. He tried to smooth out the situation and to warn Rockwell not to travel together with Rasmussen. But I'm awfully sorry, because you did not know that Knud is a very fine fellow in the world, but he is jealous. do it here right now. But I'm deaf, so it's okay. Yes, it's an answer to Rockwell. But I'm awfully sorry because you did not know that Knud is the very finest fellow in the world. But he is jealous. He can't help it. He craves to be the best and the biggest and the most strong in the company. And now he found out that you also, as a writer, press him to the ground. And that made him show himself old. Don't go and tolerate with him. I can do it, but you can't. In Freuchen's view, Rasmussen's jealousy was about Kent's writing. Kent by E is about England, which was Rasmussen's home ground. In mid-July, Kent arrived in his Slottsvik and began building this one-room house. At the end of August 31, Salamina moved in as housekeeper or kipper in Greenland. Here you have the message from Kent with his writing. And an undated handwritten letter is this. To Freuchen from September, Kent told that he was now settled in his Slottsvik. I'm settled down in his Slottsvik, built my house, have again wife, plus 2 children, all live in a one room. A bit messy, funny, and fun. My wife, Kiva, is one Salomina. Salomina, not Salomina, Salomina Fleischer. Do you know her? Cousin by marriage to Knud. Yes, yes, she is. This determined Salamina's family relation and her age. The Greenlandic name was Salamit. One of the myths about Salamit has been that she was 26 when she met Kent, but in reality, she was 30 years old. It is unknown how fast Rasmussen became aware that the widow of his cousin had moved in with Kent along with her children. It is most likely that Freuchen was the messenger. How Rasmussen received this message is unknown too, but it is a fact that he had a very close relationship to the Fleischer family. Jens Fleischer was his beloved Uncle Jens, a brother to his mother and Salamit's father-in-law. I'm convinced that Rasmussen experienced that Kent had come alarmingly close to his family in Greenland, too close. During the spring of 32, Rasmussen must have done something that made Kent and Francis very, very angry. In June, he wrote from his Slottsvik a handwritten letter to Freuchen where he did not dampen his words. Such a nest of nasty political intrigue, petty, cheap, lying conspiracies we have been drawn into and made party to. It would be funny if it were not so damn unprincipled and insulting. If Daugaard doesn't know it, he is an incredibly simple, trusting soul. It has just wiped out the last bit of affection and respect that we have for the art. At this point, Ken and his wife were exhausted, hence writing with, and Rasmussen was on his way from Copenhagen. The German film expedition, with the film SOS Iceberg, had just arrived in Copenhagen. What had caused this character assassination of Rasmussen is not entirely clear. When Francis landed in Copenhagen the last day of March, on her way to Slottsved, Rasmussen and Daugaard-Jensen received her Two days later, she left Copenhagen. Most likely, she had also met Hannah and Doug. Perhaps she had been told about Ken's life and activities in Greenland and felt discomfort by the gossip about her husband she may have listened to. When arrived in Greenland, she has passed the gossip on to Rockwell. That may explain the harsh statement on Rasmussen's letter. A wire from Rasmussen to Francis and Kent, dated July 1st, shows that despite the problems between them, they had invited Rasmussen to visit them in his hospital. Thank you, doing everything I can coming to his hospital. Greetings, Knud. Rasmussen had accepted for money to be the official protector and advisor for the German film project. He needed money for his own feature film project, Palos Wedding. We also know that this visit was not realized. The morning of July 6th, Rasmussen and Emil Langberg passed the Slottsved on their way to the film expedition's headquarters. Kent and Francis were at their home that morning. They deliberately have avoided each other. Prior to that, Rasmussen had arrived at Copenhagen to be with the German film expedition, but they disappeared. In Kent's diary and manuscript for Greenland Journal, he described the arrival and the events of that day. This description was omitted in the final edition of Greenland Journal. Rasmussen is not at all mentioned in Salavina or Greenland Journal. That is notably. But that does not mean that Rasmussen had not been on the agenda in Kent's writing process. The omitted pages cannot be found in the archives in Washington. No, they can be found there. That's what I mean. In this description, Kent took an ironic distance to Rasmussen, who did not visit the welcome coffee Kent has arranged for him, probably in the hope of repairing their friendship. Their reunion became a total failure. The day ended up with Kent witnessing a quarrel between Rasmussen and his helper Hans Brun, who had become friend with Kent. Rasmussen saw that Kent was aligned with Brun, and Emily was the subject of the quarrel. In a letter to Daugaard-Jensen dated the same day, already the same day, Rasmussen passed his lawsuit. Knud and Francis conferred in their ironic distance, the ironic distance they took to Rasmussen. And this also, because this is also important. And it's to Daugaard-Jensen, I said. Your letter has made us very happy, just at a time where we were a little depressed by the ponderous official visit to the friendly Germans of Knud and the Landsskole, the governor. I'm wondering why these capable and intelligent Germans need a protector, unless he can perhaps derive the mosquitoes away. And you can see here, Frank was befriended with the Germans in the beginning. No problems. Until Rasmussen's arrival, Kent was in friendly contact with the Germans. They were guests at his 50 years birthday, brought champagne. He got a friendship with a German pilot as Ute. They together created the famous airmail stamp. And Rockwell sent it to Daugaard-Jensen in this letter. The letter proves that the stamp was printed in June 32. Only 4 Germans and the German seaplanes were based in Islotto. But it is a persistent miss that the whole stayed in Islotto. The fact is that they stayed at first at a place called Copenhagen, and afterwards, most of the time, in Lovise, another city. The scandals they made, which can strongly criticize, took all place in Russia and never in Islotto. But it is persistent this that it was in Islotto. And I don't know why. I have proofs for what I will tell you. Emmy's name repeatedly appears in the letters I have found, not least in the correspondence between Kent and Freuchen. As mentioned, Daugaard realized early in the process that Francis Kent did not like Emmy. In February, oh, I'm so dry now. I'm drying out. In February 32, Freuchen wrote that Emmy did not like him, and that it explains that the contact with Rasmussen had been very late. But Knud, I'm sorry to tell you that I saw very little of him. He came home from his trip this fall, but I only met him very little. You know that I'm not very fond of his Navy officers, and he keeps going on with it. I found out that Emmy disliked me for the time being, and it explains it. She has become a very important girl, and if she do not fancy a poor fellow, he is bad style. Oh. I hope I can get the slides. Hang on. A year later, Knud in a letter told Freuchen about the events in his philosophy and Daugaard-Jensen and Daugaard-Jensen. Freuchen wrote in his answer that Emily was the reason why Rasmussen is associated from him. I'm sorry what you write about Knud, because it is absolutely the same with me. You have been so formal against each other, and Emily don't like it. I don't know why, and I don't care, but that means that Knud can't be friendly either, and I'm sorry. Much later, Knud elaborates on his view of the relationship between Emily and Rasmussen in a letter to Freuchen from 44, 10 years later. Almost since I first met her, I believed her to be a thoroughly unpleasant actress and deplored her influence over Knud. I think she always knew she was smart, that I knew her. I always attributed my progress to Knud to her influence. I think she must have been in part responsible for the rather shabby politics that Knud was brought at times to play. One of Knud's reasons for inviting Rasmussen to his sorceries in July 1932 could be that he had a strong desire to go north to Thule on board Rasmussen's boat. In a letter from Daugaard to Freuchen in December 1932, she wrote that her husband said no to let Knud join the boat because there was no seats left, and therefore Knud now hates Rasmussen for that. In a letter to Freuchen from November, Daugaard repeats the explanation for the unfriendliness. Only one thing, in case you should be robbed, you should know the following. When he now suddenly hates Knud, so that there are no limits to what he says about him, then the whole reason is that he last year could not be allowed to go to Thule because there were no empty seats on the boat. For Knud, this was the last straw that broke the camel's back, and Rasmussen did not allow him to sail with the boat to Thule. This is probably why Knud chooses to end the communication with Rasmussen, as it appears on this letter to Freuchen in January 1933. Knud and Emily were in Daugaard-Jensen. I didn't go there. There was an exchange of formal invitations between Knud and me, but that was all. I think that we may consider diplomatic negotiations ended. At any rate, Emily and I do not speak in passing, because Emily was still in Copenhagen. Knud was back to the East Coast. Rasmussen had of course told his wife about all this. When she heard that Knud and his son Gordon had planned to travel together via Copenhagen in 1934, Daugaard described in a letter to Freuchen the feelings she and her deceased husband had for Knud. That's plain speaking. It's a scandal that he is allowed to go up there again this year. Everyone up there hates and despises him and has sent complaints about him. I find the simple fact that he tries in every way to set Finland up against the Danes should be enough to forgive him, of course, for life. When we ourselves are so absolutely done with him, it's about all because he has been ungrateful and shameless to bring Knud down. For Knud has never done him anything but good. But perhaps because he now, after his increased knowledge of Greenland, has started to be jealous of Knud because he was so not up there. It's what's sick salt to make himself indispensable up there. Otherwise, one cannot comprehend his insane behavior. Knud's contempt for him was so deep that I have never heard him so completely dropped off a human being. It is quite obvious that Daugaard in this letter was a speaking tube for her husband. She had not been in Greenland herself, certainly. She was seeing the events through the eyes of her husband. Freuchen's view of Knud was different. In his reply to Daugaard, said after Knud's death, he wrote, "Then there's Rockwell. Yes, here I stand different." Oh, I have this too, so you can read this yourself. Here I stand different. Rockwell has never said a word about conflicts with other Danes up there than the trade manager in his hospital, who I myself have seen exploit the Greenlanders. But he has rightly criticized the trade up there because there were no names with the wood and so on. All the little things that are big in Greenland. Rockwell told me that he had not seen much Knud when they last were together in the winter, but he did not talk about anything, and I know him only as a nice, good Rockwell we were so happy about. I do not agree with researchers and writers who conclude that it was Knud and Rasmussen's Bohemian inclinations that made them to competitors for the favor of the women. And that this should have caused the jealousy and the enmity. The letters I found to advisors tell another story. Rasmussen's envy and Knud's distrust stemmed from their common interest in Greenland. They both experienced that the other side treated the Greenlanders wrongly and for their own gain. They had no understanding of the other's motive and actions. The two charismatic, fiery souls never had a fly-playing conversation with each other about their disagreements. The first sign of Knud's disassociation from Rasmussen can be read in the letters from June 31. The first sign of Rasmussen's disassociation from Knud can be read in his letter to his daughter Hanne in March 31, where he wrote that her coming marriage had completely chased away the ghost of her. Daugaard's fear had been that Hanne wanted to move back to the US to work for the family care. Daugaard wanted to be married at home. In the two letters to her from August and December, after the events in Copenhagen, this disassociation of Knud was quite obvious. You have seen it showed the first letter, the next letter is more important in this context. He told in the first letter that Knud was a dangerous man and that she should take good care of herself. In my opinion, the problem is not about Hanne's virtue, as some writers seem to say, but the fear that she should meet Knud and has grown together in Copenhagen. And this he explains in the next letter. Rasmussen was afraid that they would tell her their version of the events before he got the opportunity to tell his own version to her. Rasmussen knew very well that Ken and Boone's version was very unflattering to him. That's why Ken was dangerous. The two letters are filed in different archives. Some researchers have not found both letters. Ken blamed Rasmussen that he did not want to meet the Greenlanders at eye level. For example, at the coffee meet he had organized, and for example, when Rasmussen tried to bring local hunters in life-threatening situations in their periods to please the German desire for dramatic scenes to use in their film. Rasmussen blamed Ken that he criticized the Danish colonial authorities and the Danish traders, and that he flattered us to the Greenlanders to be popular at cost of the Danes, and also that he was very selfish. The archives contain no evidence that Ken and Rasmussen made contact during 33. Rasmussen passed away December 31, 33, without having reconciled with Ken. Reconciled with Ken. I'm sure that for Ken it was shocking to hear about the death of Rasmussen. But Ken was able to see the difference between a personal conflict and Rasmussen's greatness and significance for Greenland and for the Arctic Research. Already the day after Rasmussen's death, Ken and Francis sent a condolence wire to Daugaard-Jensen. Greenland's, Denmark's, the world's, and your loss. This wire was followed up by a letter in which he wrote, the death of Knud brought out highest tributes to him from the whole American press. And it was barely the words lost and a deep shock to those of us here who were his friends. Ken had, after the death, no desire to put down Rasmussen in public, until private stories about the bad experiences he had with him. Ken had thus reconciled with Rasmussen's post-mortem and acknowledged his great importance for an influence as Arctic explorer of Greenland. But I doubt whether Rasmussen could have reconciled with Ken if Rasmussen has not died. In a letter to Ken from January 34, Freuchen admits that in the recent years he had been at a distance from Rasmussen, but had now discovered how much he liked him after his death. It's not. Last sentence here, if Rasmussen had not died, their friendship might have faded to nothing as their life paths were about to develop in very different directions. Paradoxically, one can say that Rasmussen's death saved their friendship. That's the story.
We are right at the end. I want to thank you, Eric, for your talk and ask if you wouldn't mind, because we're close to the end and we have a celebration that our chair of interdisciplinary studies is going to participate in our reception, and our faculty are going to be involved. But if you would, Eric will be a part of the reception, and if you have questions, I'm sure he would be happy to answer them when we continue on to the Rockwell Kent Gallery. So we hope you'll join us for the human flow Rockwell can't wind down in the Feinberg Library, Rockwell Gallery. It will start now. So thank you so much, and thank you to Eric for your research.
And see this left board for $10. It's about, you see, I sold, but it's, you see, I'm close, but it's some years ago, so the new letters are not this, but it's based on the, so someone, but I only have seen. And $10 goes to the children.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Did anybody at my side hear that?
Nobody.